Hi, this is Ananya, and this is my second video upon my YouTube channel. And today I want to tell you about something no one has told you before, a self love revolution. And we already knew about self love, we always knew that we were supposed to be kind to ourselves. It's just a sudden revolution has begun in the world where self love has started to become the emphasis of conversation, the emphasis of teachings. And what I'm trying to say is self love is something that people talk about these days. And it is just as well because sometimes we forget that self love is a series of steps or let's just say self-love is not something that we feel. It's not just something that we feel towards ourselves, because everyone is supposed to love themselves, right? But sometimes our circumstances, our life brings us to a point where we can't love ourselves that much. Sometimes we have self-loathing, feelings of self-loathing, self-hate, and at that time self-love doesn't feel all that obvious, and it has to come down to these little acts of self-love that we do and practice and make a practice of every day. And that is why self-love is a revolution. That's why it's something that's talked about these days, because believe it or not, more and more people are dropping out of self-love and loving themselves, and it is becoming harder and harder for people to love themselves. As ridiculous as that sounds, it is true, and sometimes you have to take deliberate steps to love yourself. And out of the many things about self-love that has been talked about, like go for a walk in nature, or take a day off, or talk to a loved one, or take a holiday, or meditate, or groom yourself, or anything of that sort. There are a lot of self-love tips and self-love steps that have been discussed over the years and by different teachers, and there's one thing that I feel like has not been talked about that much, and which I am also trying to focus a lot more on these days, and that is following up. And by following up, I mean that sometimes we make promises to ourselves. We learn about manifestation. We learn about self-love. We learn about visualizing a better life, and we learn about all these things. But what remains is implementation. And there have been many days in my life where I was feeling low, and just to get a buzz or just to feel a little better, to uplift myself, I'd listen to a series of self-love videos, or I'd listen to a series of podcasts about spiritual well-being, mental health, and all those things, and then I'd feel a little better, and I'd just go on and continue my life the way I was just before I was feeling down, and so I fall back to my patterns. So what essentially happens is, all those things that I listened to at that moment when I was feeling low did not actually help me, because I did not implement them. I forgot to aggressively implement them. So what I'm trying to say is, sometimes no matter how much we take ourselves on a walk or talk to the people we love, sometimes we need to do stuff for ourselves. Sometimes we know when we know it's time for action, we need to take action. And when the following up on the things that matter to us remain, then self-love is not really self-love. What I mean to say is, when you're doing every other little thing to ensure that you are pouring love into yourself, the only thing that sometimes remains is that you forget to do what you say you will do. Sometimes you are one fine day you take yourself out for a walk in nature because you are feeling blue, but you had told yourself you will go for a walk every day. Or one fine day you wake up early in the morning, you feel great, and that is not self-love essentially, because you told yourself that you will wake up early every morning. So failing to implement and failing to follow up on the things that you state to yourself that you intend to do, that is the opposite of self-love. And sometimes it so happens that when you fail to do the things that you say you do, you end up hating yourself just a little bit. And over time, such acts build up that feeling of self-loathing that we all are pretty familiar with, and we wonder where it came from. And this is where it came from. It came from every single time we failed ourselves in a small little way. Every single time we told ourselves we'll do something and failed to follow up on it. And I understand that there are some days that you need to give yourself a break. You need to give yourself self-love in a way that you need to opt out of certain promises you made yourself. Like you told yourself you'll exercise, and someday you're feeling very ill and or you are just very fatigued and you need a day of rest. And that day you should opt out of the promise you made and give yourself rest. But those days have to be rare, and most of the days that you make promises to yourself, I would say 8 out of 10 days you need to follow up on those promises. If you make an intention, you need to follow up on that and carry it through, because if you don't, then the intention itself doesn't hold any value and doesn't take you anywhere, and on the whole you will start doubting yourself a little, loathing yourself a little, and over time that accumulates and becomes an identity. It becomes becomes an identity sheath around you, something that you think that you are something. Because if you have failed yourself consistently, I am a person who have since a long time been unable to follow up on the things that I said to myself that I will do, and sometimes I really think that I'm incapable of following up on those things, even though they're very simple things, and repeated failures of such kind really diminish your self-love. I'm trying to step up on my act of self-love by following up and carrying out those things that I really say I will carry out, and I encourage you to do the same. Thanks for listening. I love you, and I'll see you again soon.